it's a story of the longest and the oldest fossil fuels, listen, I'm saying fossil fuels because I come from the fossil fuels industry, but the bones of people. And it shows that when a lot of humankind came from Africa and from this part of the world, and civilization was here, but we lost it because we were not writing. And so that is why I like this program, and we'll continue to do it. And even when during the pandemic, we continued, and we'll continue to do it. But today is really a privilege for me. First of all, there's a young man here who came to my office the other day. His name is Neo. I just want to introduce him so that you know him. Neo, stand up so that the people can see you. He's written this book called The Township Economic Mistakes. We're not going to be talking about it today, but Confidence will organize that we talk about it online in future. So just make sure that before you go, you've met Confidence and you've networked, introduce yourself, and make sure that we promote this, because I like it's in line with what we're going to be talking about. And this book called Dear and then Scratch Mr. Entrepreneurship. I'm very pleased that we have Dr. J, whom I'm going to introduce now, but let me just acknowledge Confidence, who you all know now. It doesn't need any introduction. He lives up his name. His name is Confidence. He's confident, and he does a lot of ways in a confident way. And he's basically the driver behind the ULP Authors Forum. He's an accomplished author in his own right, and he's also run his own company that is publishing, called Ascension Publishing Company. Today, it's really my pleasure because I'm introducing my colleague from Wits Business School, Dr. J. Welcome to Dr. J. Let's give Dr. J a round of applause. And it's a Women's Month, so it's very important that we celebrate women that are achieving and are doing great things. I'm going to introduce her, and then from there, then hand over to Confidence. Dr. J. Jabulile is the founder and the managing director of Dr. J Business Support Company, and the program director of the Masters in Management, Business and Executive Coaching at Wits Business School. Well, I can repeat that, at Wits Business School. Just to make sure you hear it. We're very proud of her at Wits Business School, and if you look at the book, I also have written a foreword of this book as a sign of our support as Wits Business School, and we're very proud of you, Jabulile. It's a really pleasure to have you at our institution. But she's also an entrepreneur, a statistician, business coach, mentor, facilitator, public speaker, researcher, and a senior lecturer at Wits Business School. She has been in the business space for almost 20 years. And she's also been in mentoring and coaching. She's a qualified coach for almost 5 years. She's practicing business and executive coach, registered with Comensa, which is Coaches and Mentors of South Africa, serving as a board member of Graduate School Alliance for Education and Coaching. So if you need a coach, you need a mentor, you're at the right place. Now, that's why I wanted you to come, so that you can meet Jabulile, and after the meeting today, just make sure you join us inside so that we can talk more. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, over to you, Confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. One of my favorite verses to quote, I think you've heard it a few times now. It says, where there is no vision, the people perish. but equally so, where there is no visionary, there will be no vision. Can we honor the visionary of the house, please? Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Dr. J, you've been formally welcomed, but allow me to also extend a warm welcome to ULP, particularly ULP Authors Forum.
Thank you.
I'm going to get straight into the book. When I was reading it, I thought I'm reading an entrepreneurship book. But then I realized I'm reading a love story. Can you tell us about the concept? Because it's quite interesting, and the way that you unfold the concept, it made me want to read the book. It made me engage with the book on a deeper level. So can you tell us about the concept of the book, Dear Mr. Entrepreneurship?
Okay. Thanks, Confidence, and thank you for having me. So when I started writing the book, so the first thing you always think about is the title. And what you try to do, because they say first impressions are very important, what you try to do is that the title must be something that makes somebody want to know what's inside. So I intentionally make the title to be a little bit confusing, because you see there's a dear Mr. and then the Mr. is struck out, and then there's a picture of a woman outside, but then there's a picture of this complex being that you can't tell who this person really is. And that was intentional so that people get interested to go inside so that they can find out why the Mr. is struck out, who is that person sitting in front of the author, and then in that way read the book. But the concept really came from the perspective that entrepreneurship is a complex concept. And a lot of people don't want to read the books that talks about it because it's complex. You need to really have some brain muscle to read these books because they use all these terminologies, especially the academic books. So what I wanted when I came with the concept was that I wanted it to be very simple, to be something that even a teenager can read and enjoy, something that you don't need a business degree to understand the book. And I also wanted entrepreneurs that are practicing, not people in the academic space, but entrepreneurs who are doing it every day to read it. And then that's how I then decided to make it a love story so that it reads more like a storyline where you get interested to know what happened next, what happened next, what happened next. But in that process of that love story, you are learning the entrepreneurship concepts and journey and all the complexities that comes with it.
Awesome. And tell us about that love story. I mean, we've got a number of characters. Every story has a couple of characters. So we've got you as the aspiring entrepreneur, and then you're in a committed relationship with Mr. Employer. But there is this Mr. Entrepreneurship who's wooing you on the side. Can you tell us about the dynamics of that, that triangle, that love triangle, if you may?
Yeah, so when I started as an entrepreneur, so when I finished my master's, I went to work as a statistician, so I was employed. Mr. Employer was paying me a salary every month. The life was good. I had a master's, and Mr. Employer was really taking care of me. But then Mr. Entrepreneurship on the other side started to be this popular being that everybody was talking about. And he seemed more promising something more exciting than what Mr. Employer was giving me, because I was with Mr. Employer for a long time. So it was starting to be boring, routine, the same thing. Like they normally say in a marriage, you sometimes get to that point. So it started feeling like that. And when I was looking around, Mr. Entrepreneurship looked exciting. He gave a promise of independence, lots of money, own boss, all those things, new cars, big cars and all that. And I looked at that and I was like, this is the boyfriend I'm with. This is the guy I'm going to marry. But then at the same time, because Mr. Employer has been good to me for like 6 years or so, I was with him. Then now I was caught in the middle. Yeah. do I stay with Mr. Employer or do I go with Mr. Entrepreneurship? And then in that process, when I was struggling to decide who I go with, and then I decided to date both of them at the same time. So I was with Mr. Employer on the other side, and then I was with Mr. Entrepreneurship on the other side. But because Mr. Entrepreneurship was new love, the love was still pink. It got more attention than Mr. Employer got.
Yeah.
And then now I started cheating Mr. Employer so that I can save his Mr. Entrepreneurship. And then it got so complex that my life got complicated that I decided, no, Mr. Employer, that's enough, it looks greener on the other side.
Yeah.
And then I left Mr. Employer, then I went into entrepreneurship full time. And that's how then it got to a love story, because my journey as an entrepreneur felt like I was in a relationship and I was making decisions that are similar to decisions that sometimes you'll have to make when you decide a boyfriend, a husband, and those kind of things.
There's a popular phrase we used to use growing up, mooi van ver, which basically means, it looks beautiful from afar. And as you're describing Mr. Entrepreneurship, it seems like it was a mooi van ver. What were some of the blemishes that you discovered as you got closer to Mr. Entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it looked greener on the other side. It was really, really green. It was summer, it was raining, the grass was really green, and I went with him. But when I got there, I realized that then I needed to start watering the grass because it was not as green as when I was on the other side. And one of the things that I realized is the time it took, or the requirements from me to make this relationship with Mr. Entrepreneurship work. It was more taxing than Mr. Employer was. And the promises, I've got, I call the chapters in my book letters. So I've got one of the letters where I say the value proposition that Mr. Entrepreneurship promised me. But when I got there, I find out that I only knew about the benefits. I didn't know about the process to get to the benefits. And I didn't know about the requirements or what is going to take me to be able to get to the benefits. The sleepless nights, the understanding the environment, things changing. Having employees, sometimes you can't pay, it's month end, you are running around, government doesn't pay their invoices and all those kinds of things. Those were the things that when I was looking from far, I was not paying attention to, or I didn't want to pay attention to, because I was focusing on the exciting part. But when I got there, then I realized it requires far more than what I thought I'll be expected to do.
Wow, amazing. So, Nele mooi van ver.
It was more fun.
When we talk about entrepreneurship, some people immediately switch off because they think entrepreneurship is not for me. I'm committed to Mr. Employer. Is entrepreneurship for everyone? Can anybody and everybody become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, there's a big debate about whether entrepreneurs are born or they are made. Some people claim they were born entrepreneurs. Some people claim they were born not meant for this thing, and they stay away. But with my research that I've done so far, my experience and my exposure and conversations I've had with people, I came to the conclusion that nobody is born an entrepreneur. We are all born blank, but we've got capacity and capability to be anything. Like you are born as a child not talking, but you've got the development process, depending how it goes and the direction it takes, it will determine how fast you develop, whether you'll end up talking and all those kind of things, assuming, of course, a normal environment. And the same with entrepreneurs. We are born blank, but some of us get exposed to it very early on that we forget when it really started, and then we think we were born with it. But when you follow through, you will find that people that get exposed to it at a very young age, they can easily think they were born with it. But if you look at the qualities of an entrepreneur, you will see that there's no way you are born with it. Risk-taking, perseverance, how can you be born with that? If you look at all those qualities, innovative, creativity, being able to handle multiple complex things at the same time, how can you be born with that? So I believe anyone can be an entrepreneur, and I believe you become an entrepreneur by exposure, by training, by watching, by listening, by education, training, workshops, and all sorts of things, and together they make you an entrepreneur.
Wow, powerful. You've touched on it, but I want you to go deeper into it. The mindset of an entrepreneur. What kind of mindset does one need to have in order to become successful in this endeavor of entrepreneurship?
You cannot have a fixed mindset. There's normally statements people that make that I was born like this. You can't be born like this if you want to be an entrepreneur. You have to be open-minded. And you need to have that mind that is always inquisitive. And when you see things, because your mindset is different, you're always looking for opportunities. When people are sitting and complaining about what is happening around, about things that are not working, all you hear and see is opportunities, opportunities, opportunities. How can I solve this? Because your mind is not fixed and your mind is open and you believe that you've got what it takes to do something about things that are not going well. And that's the mindset that normally entrepreneurs have. It's open-minded. They see different things, and they are even looking for different things because they want to bring solutions than sit and complain about things.
Wow, powerful. I think Prof will back me up when I say that our least favorite word at ULP is failure. Yeah, we don't fail, we learn. And one of the statistics, I think you mentioned it in the book, is that plus minus 90% of enterprises fail, I believe, in the first 3 years. What are the reasons behind that failure?
Yeah, so Prof will use the word
Just for
understanding of what we're talking about. Yeah, it's a big number. I was part of that number, and I questioned a lot about myself as to why did I fail. Obviously, depending on whose report you read, some say 3 years, about 70%, some say at 5 years, and then the number changes. By the time you get to 10 years, about 90% are gone. And the biggest challenges that I've seen, or also from my own experience, we go in the blank. We don't do research. We look at it, I'll use the word tenderpreneurs. We look at the tenderpreneurs, they start a business today, they've got big cars tomorrow, and then we think that's it. But the real entrepreneurship, if you want to do the real one, where you build a business, not where you just go and get somebody to put you in procurement and give you stuff, where you do the real one of building a business, it takes time. And one of the key things in that time that it takes to get you to the success is that failure. Prof says it's the school fees you need to pay. And when you pay that school fees, don't pay the school fees and quit afterwards. And one of the biggest things that makes a difference between people who become eventually successful is those who are able to stay through that failure, because it hits you very, very hard. And that failure can come because sometimes you didn't do research, sometimes you miscalculated your risk, sometimes you calculated right, things just change quickly, like pandemic and stuff. It's difficult to tell what is going to happen. Sometimes we don't have the skills that are required to run the kinds of businesses that we are starting. So there's a lot of things that makes us fail. But that failure, unfortunately, is part of the success equation. You need it.
Awesome, awesome. Just to our online audience, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat boxes, in the comment sections, and we'll address them. Also to our live audience, if you have any questions, we'll be tackling those towards the end of the discussion. As a business grows, you know, as black people, a lot of times we've got family members, friends who, you know, are not employed. I think it's applicable to everybody, but sometimes you have family members who are not employed. You've got this business, suddenly it's growing, and then employment opportunities come up. One of the things you talk about is employing friends and relatives. Is that something you advise against? Is that something you are for? Can you just talk to us a little bit about that dynamic?
Yeah, I'm not for and I'm not against.
Yeah.
It's important to do analysis as to why you employ somebody. The criteria for employing somebody shouldn't be because it's your friend or because it's your family member or because they need the job. It should be because they've got the skills that you need to move your business forward, or they've got the right attitude that you can train them and help them to get the skills to move your business forward. And one of the mistakes I made in my first business that I talk a lot about in the book is that I look at somebody, we go to church together, poor him, he's got no job, he's struggling, come, here's a job. Yeah. But what you will find is that later on you find out why he was not working. And I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but later on you find out why poor Shem he was not working. And then now you have to deal with those things. But unfortunately in business, when you're busy dealing with those things, they cost you money and they contribute to how big you're going to fail at the end of the day, because you've got these people that you have that you took in because of their needs and not because of your business needs, that now you must pay them, but they are not delivering in terms of what the business needs. And then at the end of the day, the ship just sinks with everybody.
You mentioned earlier that some have been exposed to entrepreneurship at an early age, and thus they're able to grasp those concepts which enable them to succeed in the entrepreneurship sphere. In your own life, were you exposed to that, or is it something that you stumbled into, and who were the people that inspired you to get into entrepreneurship?
I will say I was exposed to it very early, but I didn't know that I was exposed to it. So when I grew up, my parents, we used to sell vegetables. My father was always running a taxi business. So he'll get us involved, like we'll look after the drivers. When they come in the evening, we must count the money, do the books and all that. And then sometimes they need to fix the taxis and stuff. We do all the calculations and all that. I didn't know at the time that we were running a business.
So you're a taxi boss?
and also like selling, so that we were always selling something at home, vegetables and stuff. When you come back from school, take off your uniform, you take your basket, you go knock different doors. You normally already know by that time your customers. You sell the cabbage, the tomatoes and stuff. Come back home, you do the other stuff that you need to do. So I was exposed then, but I didn't know that was entrepreneurship. I didn't know that was business. I hated it because when other kids were playing, we were busy selling. But then that was built in without us realizing, because even when now we got to high school and stuff, we were always selling something. Even now, almost all of my siblings, we are busy selling something. Now I'm here, I'm busy selling. So that thing, one of the things that I always say is, if you have seen it, if you have heard it, you have learned something. But it's a matter of what do you do with that. You can either reject it or you can accept it and do something about those learnings. But if you have seen it, heard it, done it, you have learned something. And I think we've learned that.
Your advice to parents, maybe they didn't come from an entrepreneurial background and they've got young kids, would you advise them to get them into entrepreneurship mode? And in which way?
I would say expose your kids, but let them make the decision, because the truth of the matter is that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. It's not an easy journey. So people must make their own decisions whether they want to. And I normally say this also with people who are trying to make entrepreneurship the thing for job creation. There are people who don't want it. They just want an employer and they want a job. And that's okay because we need the balance. But for those people who are open-minded, let's expose them, let's create environments where they can learn so that at a later stage, then at least they've seen it, they've heard it, then they make better decision whether they want to take that route and expose themselves or take it as a career. But it's a tough route, I won't lie. It's a tough route. If I didn't go insane in my first business phase, it was God's grace, but it's a tough route because it can go very wrong. And I sometimes hate it when people paint it as if, like the greener on the other side, like you're going to get there and things go. It takes long to build a business. You need to have the appetite for it. So if you are taking that route, you need to be very clear about it. But I think also if we start exposing our kids to it earlier, it makes them more open to it than us where we started really trying it when we were older, and then you make the mistakes. Now you've got bonds, you've got kids, you've got school fees and those things. I always say when we are young, postpone the wife or the husband, the marriage thing, postpone the bonds and the stuff and go fail. And then in that way then decide, is entrepreneurship for me or not? But at that time when we are still young, then when you fail, you don't affect a lot of people around you. So that's the gospel I preach. When you are young, you can see the wife and the husband in the marriage and the bonds and the stuff later. Give yourself the time to fail and try entrepreneurship and see if it's for you.
Wonderful. Okay. Get the book of Dr. J, verse 5. Chapter 2. In the book, you talk about different kinds of entrepreneurs. One which, speak about them, but one which I found quite interesting as well is the corporate entrepreneur, who's not so much somebody who goes out there and start a business, but they're more, the term I think is intrapreneurship. Can you talk a little bit about that and then touch on the other forms of entrepreneurship?
So, yeah, we used to the entrepreneur with the E, the one who goes out and start their own business. But what researchers have seen is that it's not only those who go out and start that are really having the qualities and practicing this thing. There are people who are within corporates, and there are corporates that create the environment for these people within the corporates now to be entrepreneurial and in their own maybe business units, run their business unit in an entrepreneurial way. And we call those ones the entrepreneurs with the I, the corporate entrepreneurs. And that's also another option to look at to say, do I want to go and start my own thing where I take all the risks by myself? Each of them has got their own advantages and disadvantages. If you go the entrepreneur route where you go and start your own thing, the risk is all yours. The financial requirements, it's all yours. Everything is you. But if you are within a corporate environment, there you get the advantage of your employer taking some of the risk, financial resources and other resources then you get from the employer, and then it gives you the space to be entrepreneurial and come up with the innovative products and stuff within a corporate environment. So it's something that is not popular yet because we always talk about the guy who go and start an SMME and those kind of things. But you've got those options, and it's a matter of checking when you are within a corporate where there is that kind of environment where you can still be entrepreneurial.
Awesome. Is there a difference between being self-employed and being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because those who are self-employed, they will kill you if you say they are not entrepreneurs. But normally the difference is that you will find gets made in research is that most of the self-employed guys, so normally they don't have ambition to grow beyond themselves. They employ themselves and it ends there. But then the entrepreneur who's got ambition to grow will grow beyond being just the only employee and employ other people. But if you have to look at the definitions of what entrepreneurship is, it's just a degree of being entrepreneurial. You'll find that the one who stays alone takes less risk, maybe less innovative and those kind of things. But the one who wants to grow will tend to take more risks because it's trying to leverage on more opportunities and stuff, and then they grow and then they create the jobs. We need both of them. I believe both of them are entrepreneurs, but it's just the level that you decide you want to be entrepreneurial at and the growth level that you want to look at.
Awesome. There's a quote that I like that says, there is no secret to success, there is a system to success. Can you talk to us about the systems and processes that we need to have in place, and sometimes they are lacking in our businesses, which causes some of the failure that you're talking about? So can you talk about systems and processes, the essential ones, which essentially become the building blocks or the pillars of the business?
Yeah, I think when you look at really trying to build something that is going to be sustainable and take you to that success, is that you've got the individual who's the entrepreneur. It's important. You've got the environment on the other side, the external factors that can make your business model not to work is important. But then you've got the enterprise, which is where then now the processes and systems that you need to be in place then now comes to play. Because most of entrepreneurs, because they are always having a lot of ideas, they don't want to sit down and put something structured and have a process, have a system that this is how things work. They normally think those things are things for the corporate guys, the big guys. Us, we are on the run every day. But what you find is that if you're ambitious, you want to grow, those things, if there are no systems in place, they say you are a manufacturing company, to say when an order comes, this is where it starts, this is where it goes, this is how we control quality, this is where it ends. When you don't have clear processes like that or systems that you put in place for things like that, everything happens randomly. And that's where a lot of mistakes happen. And that's where also you'll tend not to have things written down. That when you get more people in, they know what needs to be done in this business and how things are done. And then the failure comes in there because everybody will come do their own things. Before you know it, the customer is not getting the value proposition you promised them, because then there's no processes and systems that you have put in there that make sure that things runs in a certain way and consistently so.
Awesome. One of the things that I think COVID did was wake people to the fact that, it's no longer a one income economy. And a lot of people are into side hustling. Yeah. You've touched on it a bit earlier, but can you talk about the side hustle economy? How it's grown, how it's changing, and some of the pros and cons of doing the side hustling thing?
Yeah, side hustling has become a big thing, and I think it's slowly becoming an acceptable thing, because I think it was one of those things where people will feel when we are side hustling, then we are not serious about your business. Why don't you go full time? But side hustling, the other elements, it comes with risk taking. How much appetite you have for risk, and also sometimes resources you have to be able, because when you go full time, you still need to eat, you still need to be able to maintain your lifestyle, and everything else still needs to continue. But when we are side hustling, sometimes the advantage is that it allows you that. You can get a salary like I do. I call it side hustling, but it's a little bit different because in an academic environment, you are more flexible than in corporate. First gives me a salary every month that will pay my debit orders, because I don't want to be without that salary. But on the other side, the business gives me extra in terms of other things that I want to do. The thing is that the time, we all have 24 hours, whether you've got one job or you've got a side hustle. So you need to be very good in how you manage your time, because you need to balance between your employer's requirements and you as an employer, the requirements for your own business. But the advantage is that the resources, then you tend to be able to balance it. Also, some research say people who normally start their businesses as side hustles, they normally are able to sustain their businesses longer because they don't deplete their resources too early, because they always have these financial resources that are coming in to get it up to a level where it can stand on its own. While when you go full-time, sometimes too early, you deplete whatever that you have too early, or sometimes you even go there with nothing, and trying to get the funding and resources elsewhere sometimes can be a bit tricky. So what I will say is that the advantage for side hustling, you've got the resources, you can provide yourself, but the disadvantage is limited time. You can only do so much. And then with the full-time one is that you dedicate 100% of your time to the business. So the other upside of that is that you can accelerate or scale quicker because you are 100% there. But then the disadvantage might be that if you don't have the financial resources, then it might still slow you down. So I've got a long list in the book of the advantages and disadvantages that I advise people who are trying to decide, do I want to stay side hustling or do I want to go full-time, to look at those and apply themselves before they make the decision. The emphasis that I like making is that there's no one better than the other. It is about your context and your environment and where you are in your life in terms of which model can work for you at the time. So it doesn't make you less of an entrepreneur. And we still need to change that mindset in South Africa that if you're side hustling, then you are not a real entrepreneur, or you are not serious about your business. We all have different responsibilities.
Awesome, awesome. One of the really important issues I believe that you touch in the book is the issue of mental health. And you speak quite vulnerably about, I think you called it, you're in a zombie state. At some point, walking in Cape Town in a zombie state, but nobody could see it because you had put on a smile. Can you talk about the mental health or potential mental health issues that arise because of the stresses and challenges of entrepreneurship?
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, that was a life in my time where I was at the lowest. It was when I just closed, so the first business failed. So you're getting the story as you go along, but you can read and get the story. But I had my first business that I started in 2004, which failed after 6 years. And when it failed, I owed everybody I knew. Everybody I knew I owed, and everybody I didn't know I owed. And now, because I had no way, I borrowed money from all my friends, my family members, and to try to get this thing to work, and eventually it didn't work. So now I was at a point where I've got no way where I'll get money to pay them back. I've got creditors who are calling me. I had a showroom that and offices. I had staff that I couldn't pay, and I had to close it. And when I had to close it, it was a very painful day where I had to tell my employees that, guys, I had about 7 people. I was like, guys, you have to go. Because some months I would be late to pay them, and it was not nice. But all those things work on you. And sometimes because we are in this moment of trying to make things work, you don't realize how much. And at that time, the thing of mental health and stuff was not talked about a lot. So you don't even realize that you are depressed. You don't even realize that you've got mental health issues because you are busy pushing this thing and trying to make it work. And what I will caution entrepreneurs is, or anybody else for that matter, listen to your body. It tells you. But you ignore it because you are focusing on this thing that you are trying to make work. So I ran at a loss for too long. And in that process, then my health deteriorated because I was forever stressed, trying to figure out things, started having migraines. Every time you go to the doctor just tells you, there's no medication I can give you, go and rest, you know. You go back, you can't rest, you're trying to push this thing because you want it to work. But eventually it gets to that state where you don't even feel yourself anymore. I remember one day I went to see a client. I was still in Cape Town, so I went to see a client in Worcester. And when I was done, I was driving the opposite direction of going home. And I drove for about, I think, 200 kilometers. I see the boards, but it's not registering that I'm not going home. And I'm going home, but I'm like, I'm not getting home. And later on, I'm like, I'm not going home. And then I turn back now to go home. And that's when I realized that this thing has really taken a toll on me. Because I'll be there, you'll be having a conversation, you'll be talking, but I'm not there. I hear you, but I'm not there. Because I allowed the business to run at the loss for too long. And that comes to that thing where they say, when they talk about lean startup, that the one thing guaranteed is that you are going to fail. But what you want to try is to fail fast and fail cheap. But when we are not paying attention to the red flags, which I've got about 20 red flags I talk about in the book, that failure is a process. You don't wake up one day, boom, I fail. It's a process, but you need to pay attention to the red flags. And I think I didn't pay attention, but also not accepting that this thing has not worked is another problem. You need to get to a stage that says, it has not worked and it's okay, and give yourself the permission to close that chapter and start again. But I struggle to give myself the permission to say it didn't work, close it. You'll start something else, because at that time, even your entrepreneurial juices are not flowing because you are in a different state. So what I will say to anybody who's working hard out there, listen to your body. You know when you are you, how you are. And when you get to that point, it's no point to try to push. I know hunger will make you push because you need to eat, but it's no point to keep on pushing, because when you just go to the other side, you're not going to make that money anyway. Now you're going to have to be admitted and all. I was like, I didn't end up being admitted and stuff. I took the break and recovered. But you'll end up not making the money. So mental health is real, and you really need to pay attention to your body. So it's one of those emotional things that when I talk about, it's like I can still picture what happened then. But yeah, it's serious.
One of the things, I guess, that makes it so hard is I'm imagining that you might have personalized the failure. So if the business fails equals I am a failure.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I was not that wise at the time. Now failure does not make me think I'm a failure. But I was young and I was not wise at the time. So anything that I tried that didn't go well, I directly, put it back to me to see what's wrong with me. So at the time I had a master's and then a business failed, and I was like, I have a master's. How can this thing fail? How can I not be able to get a small business work with my master's, So it was an issue of, I started questioning my intelligence. I started questioning my qualifications. My confidence went to the lowest level. My self-worth, I questioned everything because I felt that I was not good enough. But with time, then I got to realize that it had nothing to do with me. My MSc had nothing to do with entrepreneurship anyway. It was stats. So it was not going to help me run a business. But it took me long to get to that point where I realized that failure is success. Failure is part of the process. Failure is not supposed to be a negative thing that will make you start looking yourself down and doubting yourself. I know it's easier said than done, because when it happens, it really hits you. But if you start having that mind shift, where you start saying to yourself, when you are still well and not failing, to say, it's going to be, you expect it, it's going to be part of my process. For me to get to the success, I'll have to pass a few failures. But it does not reflect on my inabilities or my intelligence and those kind of things. So don't take failure personally. If you want to be successful, embrace failure. I know it's not going to embrace you warmly. It's a difficult thing to embrace, but it's one of those things that as you start giving yourself the permission to fail, you handle it a little bit differently.
Awesome. one of the chapters I read, which I found very interesting as well, was where you speak about ownership of the business. And you made a statement there which I felt was quite deep. You said, especially with us black people, is that because in yesteryears we were denied ownership at all different levels. And now we are so hungry for ownership that sometimes we want to own, 100% of 10 rand instead of 1% of a billion.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about the challenges you had with ownership and partnership?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to have partners. So because of our country with all these policies they had, so one of the white company needed to improve their scorecard. So they wanted a small business that they can take in for ED so they can get points. And then I was one of that company. I was the company that they identified. Obviously, through social capital, they knew somebody I know, and then I got connected to them. And the process started very well. So they were supposed to take 49% of the business. I was going to own 51%. They were going to put in capital to try revive the business, and because I had customers, I had clients, I had orders, but because cash flow has dried because of the margins and profitability and a lot of things, I needed a capital injection. So they were willing to do that. They were going to come in, support me, put in money and all that. But in that process, so at the start, we didn't write everything down. We didn't sign things. And we changed bank accounts and put all the directors, we changed shareholding, we changed directors, all that was changed. But what was not changed was the liabilities. So all the creditors I had and stuff, we never really got to that point to change so that we all also responsible for that. So I signed, when I started, because I was alone, I signed surety and stuff for all those things. So it was still all in my name. So in the process of that partnership, because that thing started rolling, I was not in a hurry to sign because I wanted the money to come, and I was in a rush to get the business up and running again. They came in, they started putting in money, and then in the process, then they had this friend who was in the same industry as mine, who they wanted to bring in. And bringing that person in meant that that person was also going to take shareholding. But they didn't want to give this person from their 49%, so they wanted me to give the person from my 51, which means I was not going to be the majority shareholder anymore. And no, I was not going to let that happen. But so I refused, and then we started fighting. And this guy that they were bringing in, because he was white, he had access to, because I was supplying learning material to schools, he had access to the white schools that I didn't have access to. So combining my business and his was going to give us a big customer base, which in the stationery world that gives you an advantage with the manufacturers and wholesalers. But I was so committed to be the majority shareholder that I didn't see all those benefits that were going to, that I was going to also benefit with a smaller percentage. I was so committed to my 51. And then we started fighting, and nobody was level-headed. It was an emotional thing, and then everybody went their separate ways. But because we went our separate ways fighting, I was left with all the liabilities that we never changed, the signing and stuff. But the bank accounts and stuff were all changed, so I couldn't use that bank account anymore. I couldn't take the money out or do anything with that. So I was stuck, and now it was like, what do I do? Because I wanted to move on, so I had to go and register a new business, similar name, because the brand was already known in Cape Town, so I didn't want to change it. So I went, registered a new, with a new name similar to that one, opened a new bank account, but then the creditors wanted their money, and now I don't have money because now we cannot proceed with that. So there was a court case and stuff. We can't proceed with that bank account before things are resolved. They were a big company. They had the money to have the lawyers and all that. I didn't. I was already struggling. So we ended up leaving the thing hanging and agreed to just, everybody moved on. I dropped the court case because I didn't have the funds. So my fixation of my 51% took away for me an opportunity to have less shareholding, but have a business that's working, which I was, let's say, going to have 30%, but maybe of a business that is worth 5 million, than have my 51% of a business that was negative. That's how I lost.
I think it's a song, said, if I knew then what I know now. If you knew then,
I paid the school fees.
You paid the school fees.
Yeah,
what would you do differently?
I think now I'm not fixated in the ownership in terms of what is written down. You need to get into partnerships with a long-term view. Yes, obviously, I made a lot of mistakes in terms of not getting things signed and properly checked at the beginning because I was in a hurry to get this thing going. But if I were to do this again, first I will have things written down. I will get somebody who understands contracts and stuff to look at what we are signing down. I will not be fixated on the number. I will look at the value of the business itself of 1% of a billion versus 51% of a negative. And I think I'm wiser now. I work with a lot of people now and in a far different way because I'm looking more long-term and I'm looking at the value than the percentage. And as I say, I don't know whether it's because of that we grew up owning nothing. Now we just want to own it all cost. It can be zero, but I'm owning it. So I don't know. But it's something to be careful about and apply yourself when you've got partnerships to get into, to say what is the value and get somebody who's not emotional about it because we get married to our businesses. And sometimes it becomes sore to let go of certain percentages. Get somebody who understands those things to look at this thing and advise you from a more neutral position than from somebody who's emotional invested. So I got advice for people who were also emotional investors. And it's like, no, let that go. We don't care. We'll find somebody else, and we never found somebody else. So it's those kind of things.
Wow. When you become an entrepreneur and you start providing employment, you know that unemployment is a huge issue in South Africa. There are pros and cons. You spoke about having to let people go, but on the upside, you know, you can become, you know, quote unquote a hero because now you're employing people. Can you talk to us about the pros and cons, you know, the responsibilities when you start scaling and start growing, and then you onboard people? Just the pros and cons of that process.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is because sometimes growth can be also your enemy. The biggest thing that I always emphasize is do your analysis. When you take people on, do your analysis, what skills you need, what attitude you need, what's the culture you want to build, and then start taking people on. But also when you take people on, don't do things verbally. You might find yourself at the CCMA. Have documents. If you're not good at that, get somebody to help you with documents. You're a small business, you don't need thick, long things, but have basic things that you can use in your business to say, we are agreeing on 1, 2, 3, this is what I'm going to pay you, this is how I'm going to pay you. Because one of the things that becomes difficult to let people go is when they are not delivering and there was nothing written down that you are here to deliver this. Because then how do you let them go? You never said, I'm here to reach this and this and this targets. So it gets tricky to let people go. So formalize things. I always say as a small business, treat your business like tomorrow is going to be the biggest company ever. So that you don't struggle with documentation, which is some of the things that makes it difficult for us to access a lot of support that is there because we don't document anything. We just run, we eat from the same account, we run the business from the same account, we go party from the same account, we buy liquor from the same account. So you want to separate things so that tomorrow this thing grows, you want to do something about it. You've got documents, you've got track record that you can show. But the biggest thing about getting people in, make sure you check the skills. Don't think that references are for big businesses. When somebody gives you something and puts references to say, I've worked here, call those people, please, and check why those people are not working there anymore. Because some of the things you find out too late, and when you find out too late, then now it's difficult to let people go. So try to be a little bit more formal as if it's a big business, but without really incurring costs to do a lot of documentation, but just to make sure that you keep yourself on the safe side.
Awesome. One of the things you mentioned in the book, and we're chatting offline with Prof as well, is the issue of corruption in our country. Is quite big. Nepotism, all the different isms, and in the book you talk about the gray area between social capital and corruption. Can you delve a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, you have to ask me that one. That one, when you talk on something that is recorded, you need to be very careful how you say it, because it's a very, very tricky one. There's so much gray that you won't believe it. At some stage, I made some effort to try to read up about definitions of ethics, corruption, and all those kind of things. And what you find is that these things are context dependent. What you find that in South Africa we can say is unethical or we say is corrupt, you go somewhere else, it's acceptable. So it becomes then very important that if your business is operating in a certain context or in a certain environment, understand the perceptions and the reality. Because you cannot ignore what people perceive as corruption, even if it's not corruption, because it can taint your business. So what I normally say to entrepreneurs is that familiarize yourself with what people perceive and what is real, and then make sure that you trade carefully around those things, because it can get you into trouble. You don't want to end up at the commission of inquiry as a small business. So social capital is one of the key things that will give you resources in a small business, because we don't have the cash to pay for everything. So you use your networks to get privileges and access to certain things. But you always have to understand what is perceived and what is real in the private and the public sector, because it's not the same. I used to do a lot of business in government, the public sector. The story was different there. Now I do a lot of business in the private sector. And most of my businesses, especially big projects, I get through my networks. People will say, I know Jabu can do this. They refer me. I go talk to that person. I get the business and I do it. And nobody cries corruption. But if I can go do that in the public sector, what do you think is going to happen there? They're giving business to your friends because they are mandated and they are controlled by a different set of rules than what the private sectors can do, because it's public money. So you need to understand those things. So you cannot just sit and say, but I'm not corrupt, and ignore them. If you want to grow, if you want to sustain your business, you need to understand those things and trade very carefully. But I always emphasize, social capital is that one item in your balance sheet that you don't see it. The ink is white written there, but it will take your business very far. I am where I am. A lot of things I get because of social capital. I build relationships with people. I keep them. I maintain them. And I make sure that I nurture them. And that makes a big difference, because then you don't run your business with just calling. You get a lot of referrals and a word of mouth. But also give a good service when you are referred. And then you get referred and all that. But you have to be very careful, especially with what has been happening in the country. You have to be very careful how you use that, especially if you operate in the public sector.
Awesome, thank you. I believe we've got a roving mic. We'll start taking questions from our audience, and also online. I'll be looking for those questions from our online audience. You spoke about social capital, and it's the invisible line item on the balance sheet. As an entrepreneur, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, this social capital, how do I grow my social capital? Where do I go? What should I get into? What should I listen? Who should I listen to? Who should I speak to? How do you grow that social capital?
So it's the same like what you do in your personal life. You meet people, you have a conversation with them, you like what they do, they like what you do, you start talking, you call each other, and then it grows like that. In business, you need to be a little bit more intentional about it. And if I can maybe give examples of how I built my social capital when I started, because I had none. I will go to networking sessions. When I'm there, I make sure I'm visible. I make sure I talk to people. I make sure people know what I stand for. I help people if they need help on something, because tomorrow they might help me as well. So if you are an entrepreneur, I normally say if you're an entrepreneur, you call yourself an introvert, you've got a problem. Because then that introvert tag says to you, sit at your corner and talk to nobody. But business, if you want social capital, you have to talk to everybody. And not that you're going to get something out of everybody, but it becomes a habit that you do. Some of the benefits of that, you see them 10 years later, 20 years later. There are people who are connected with on LinkedIn, which is also now we've got social media platforms. You go there and intentionally connect to people and have conversations with people. Meaningful conversations, not those of hi, the hi and disappear. You've got meaningful conversations with people, and then they start seeing what you do. They start seeing what you post, and also be intentional about what you post, what you want people to see, because that's how you build it. Then people start talking to you. So go to events, go to social media, look for people that represent kind of like people you either want to work with or potential customers. When you meet people, tell them what you do, let them know what you do. And when you are there, also, if you join other things, you join different social groups, be consistent, don't show up 1 month and disappear for a year and show up again. You build it continuous. It has to be consistent, and it has to be a continuous process. And one of the things that I started also as an entrepreneur, I also used to call myself an introvert, but now I've pegged that on the side. I've got these networking sessions that I normally do. I call them Entrepreneurs Breakfast. I've started this 5 years ago, and we've been continuing. We took a break during COVID, but we've brought it back now, where we come back and allow people to get to know each other and learn. We've got even a Facebook closed group and a WhatsApp group for that. We refer each other, we know each other's businesses, we share information on those platforms, and that's how you build it. And you contribute, so you don't go there to just, don't be a parasite. You don't just go there to take. You contribute as well, because when you add value to other people, they will want to add value to you as well. Wonderful,
wonderful. All right, we'll start with our online questions. Just excuse me on that. So greetings to everyone. I have 3 following questions for the guest author. Number 1, what is the value of understanding leadership and sales skills in one's entrepreneurial journey? So we'll take them one by one. You can tackle that one.
So one of the things that I've seen is that sometimes entrepreneurs don't see themselves as leaders. And that's the biggest mistake that you can ever make. Because one, you need to be able to lead yourself. And when your business grows, then you need to be able to lead those people that you employ in your business, have a vision, show them where you are going and how you are going to get there. So it's very important that as an entrepreneur, you develop your leadership skills, because you can be a one-man business today, but tomorrow you might not be, and you need to have those skills to be able to manage people. And which one of the things I think that let me down in my first business is that I didn't pay attention to that fact that I'm a leader. I need to balance, and they normally talk about the hands, the head, and the heart. I was too much on the heart. So people didn't deliver, and I made my decisions from the heart, and that took me down. And as a leader, you need to balance the deliverables, be compassionate, still have a heart, know that people are human beings, should be able to think as well and use your brain. And if you get that balance right, then you will go somewhere as a leader, as an entrepreneur. So it's important to develop those skills.
Awesome, awesome. By the way, the question is from Mr. Litle Mkai. The second one, how is the lack of understanding pastel and SWOT analysis negatively impact the local emerging entrepreneurs?
So those are all the external factors, the politics, the economy, everything that happens outside your enterprise. If you don't understand what is happening in your environment, you will make wrong decisions. Let's say, for an example, we are about, all of us, to move from having maybe face-to-face events. We're going to move to online events. And you'll be busy starting this business about physical events, while the trend outside are saying everybody is moving to that direction. So it's very important that you do that analysis, because it will make you see also your strengths. It will make you see what are the threats in terms of what is coming, what might be the future things that are trending. So it's very important that you do that analysis and understand your external environment, because it affects your business model big time.
Awesome. And then thirdly, should entrepreneurs focus more on working in or working on their businesses?
Get the balance. The stages, there's growth stages in a business. There's where, when you are starting, where you are just you, so you have to be in there working. But as the business grows, you can be able to get other people to do some of the things so that you can focus on the strategy and other things and building the business. So pay attention to the stage of the business as to which one you need a 50 or 70 or 10% of, until you get to that stage where you can have people then to help you with some of the things. So I won't say focus more on this one. You do the analysis and see what balance works for the business at the stage that the business is at.
Awesome. And then we've got a question from Fefa Moleleki. What are the learnings from one of your biggest failures in your entrepreneurial journey, and what can you say to aspiring entrepreneurs regarding your learnings?
The biggest learning was that failure is part of the process. You can't, there's no way, you can't skip it. If you want to skip it, then you're skipping the success, because it's like the path to get you there. So you have to be comfortable with failure if you are an aspiring entrepreneur. I always say, if you don't like to fail, don't be an entrepreneur, because then you are not going to be a successful entrepreneur if you avoid the failure, or you try not to fail, because the thing is, you're going to take less risk, you're going to do less, trying to be careful that you don't fail. But the failure is what takes you there. So if you don't want to fail, don't be an entrepreneur. But if you're an aspiring entrepreneur and we are happy that in my journey to get there I'll fail, then welcome to the entrepreneurship world.
Welcome to the club. Do we have questions in house? The gentleman in black. Please stand up, state your name and your question, please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. The name is Alan Aaron from Katlehong. Three quick ones, Dr. Jabulile. The first one is, when do you get to a point, or when do you get to decide if a business fails that I'm closing this one, starting a new one, or I'm going to work this one to regrow it, or I'm going to try again? The second one is, what would be your advice in mixing business and emotions? Then the last one would be, through your journey with the nuggets of wisdom that you've accrued along the years, what would you say to a 20-year-old Dr. Jabu, looking back? Thank you.
Okay, I should have brought a paper to write the questions down. I'll start with the last one. I think, thank you. What I will say to a younger me is be open-minded, try things and fail while you are young. You don't have to be an employee as much as you don't have to be an employer. You choose. The options are there for you, and you can choose. Because when we grew up, we felt like we had to be employees. So that's what I will say to the younger me. Remind me the second one.
That's mixing business and emotions.
Or mixing business and emotions. It's an EQ thing. I think, as I shared earlier, that sometimes one of the things that maybe I should have done then was to get people who were not emotionally invested in my business to help me with some of the decisions that I needed to make. If you are a person who's not able to take your emotions out of things and soberly make decisions, you're going to struggle, because those who are clever or wise, they normally say never make any decision when you are emotionally angry or too happy and those kind of things. So you need to be able then to take your emotions out of it and make decisions. But it's an EQ thing that you need to get to that process of building your EQ, so that at the end of the day, then you are able to manage. There are things, obviously, that will trigger you, will make you emotional, but the self-awareness then becomes important, so that you know, here, these are my emotions making this decision. These are my emotions misleading me, and then you're able to manage that. But yeah, you can't run a business with just emotions. It will take you where my first business went.
And your first question, sir?
The first one was what influences or what guides you into taking the decision of closing a failing business or retrying it again?
That one only the owner of the business will know. Like as I was saying, that normally failure of a business is not an event, it's a process. And if you've got, you know, the red flags or the things that you need to check when your business is, when you start seeing all of them, then that's where you sit down and do the analysis. Is for me time to close? Do I still have ideas on how to make it work, or I don't have ideas anymore? The reason I don't have ideas, is it because I've tried all that I could, or is it just because maybe I'm tired, I just need to to take a break? So those are decisions that no one else will tell you to say, close now, try again, look for another way of doing it. Is those reflections that you need to be able to make as an entrepreneur, to say, where I am now, do I think I still have what it takes to try and get this thing to work? And deep in your heart, you know when you can't get it to work anymore. But because we get married to our businesses, we refuse to listen to that voice that says you've run out of ideas of how to make it work. But at the same time, I'm not saying it's a straightforward thing. Decision, you might be wrong, but also be comfortable being wrong. You might lose it and only to find that there was still a chance. It's part of the game. Some of the decisions you make will be wrong. You learn.
Thank you. To the gentleman in brown.
Greetings to the house. Igama Ubonginkosi Mtiliso from Israel. So firstly, I think one must extend his words of gratitude for having to share their experiences, that entrepreneurship is indeed not a bed of roses. So my first question would be, which was something that was thought-provoking. Will you advise that a startup to have a capital injection? For instance, you said, as you begin with the business, we must see it at the end. So will you advise one to look for an investor at a startup stage? And then secondly, my question would be, my business seems to capitalize on the township economy. So most of my clients are people who really don't like doing things by the book. So would you advise me to put myself in their shoes? Like, for instance, if there's a certain document that is required, sometimes you end up saying, no, we can cook that, which is something that from a principal point of view, it's quite incorrect. So lastly, from your perspective, there's a Township Economic Development Act that just been passed by the Gauteng government through Mr. Pakstow and Mr. David Magura. So from your point of view, will you say policies in the government, do they actually materialize? Will you invest your time in assuring that you benefit from a certain policy position? Then, how do I put it? Then putting half of your legs, then the whole body of it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bonkosi. In terms of being a startup and looking for investors, it depends on the type of business that you are doing. There are businesses that you can start and be able to run for some time without getting an investor or getting any external funding. If you can, then do that. But there are businesses that maybe you need machinery, you need a big capital that you can't do it yourself. Then at that stage, then you can look for an investor or a partner. But it's business dependent. So don't make an assumption that when you are starting a business, you're gonna need funding. Do that analysis to say, do I need external funding? If I do, how much of it do I need? How much of it can I be able to do without? Can I bootstrap around those things? Because you want to minimize also having external parties early on before your thing is clearly structured as to where it's going and those kind of things. So check your business and see whether do you need or don't you need, and then make that analysis and make the decision. The second one is more of a principle thing or an ethical thing, or what? Is it wrong because it's a criminal thing, or is it just you personally as your principle that is incorrect? Then you personally make the decision. Because one of the things I think that was raised in one of the conversation we had about ethics issues, and it was in class, and one of the students asked me that if I'm so hungry and this guy is asking me to do something that I feel it goes against my morals, should I do it so that I get the business because I'm hungry? And normally people, when they ask you questions like that, they already have the answers and they know that what they are not supposed to do, but they want to do it, and they want somebody else to say they must do it, so that then it clears them to say, I did it because Dr. J said I should do it. So the personal decision. The policy one, I'm not sure whether I'm getting what's exactly the question around the policy issue.
Okay, thanks. So in most cases, government will come up with certain policy positions that will assumingly have been drafted to benefit the public. But only to find out when you take time to invest in it, it does not materialize. Or it has already targeted certain politically connected individuals. So will you advise someone to wholeheartedly venture into benefiting from such a policy position, or put half of your eggs on it?
Policy is most of the things is things that are meant to benefit us. But I acknowledge the fact that the implementation sometimes does not work the way we like it to work, benefit us the way we like it to benefit us. I always say entrepreneurship is about trying and finding out. You never know. And I said this also when the budget speech was out. There was a fund about that was going to support entrepreneurs where you don't have to pay collateral and stuff and stuff. And most people were saying, I'm not even going to apply because I'm not going to get it. Then I say, you are not an entrepreneur because you never know until you try it. Go try it and say, I didn't get it. But not to try to leverage from something that is meant to benefit you because you're already making the assumption that is meant for other people. You might miss out, you never know. You never know. You, as an entrepreneur, you try, you never know. Unless you've got other alternatives where you make that conscious decision that I'm not going to play this side, I'm going to play this side, then it's fine. But sometimes you don't have those options, then you try and find out. You'll be surprised. You never know.
Wonderful. Yeah. Let's start with the gentleman. Yeah, the gentleman, I think he had his hand raised up first. The gentleman in the cap, and then we'll come in.
Oh, greetings, everyone. My name is Nico. Dr. Chabune, I actually respect the fact that when you mention entrepreneurship, you mostly mention failure and everything, right? And we all aware that we grow up in a society where everyone is supposed to go to school, whilst schools are against failure and everything. And you did mention also that parents must at least try and introduce their kids to entrepreneurship. How do you then do that while you know that at the end of the day, they're going to go to an institution that's against failure, while entrepreneurship is also based on failure itself? So how do you tackle that as a parent? You want to introduce your kid to entrepreneurship, but then you're going to take them to school, and then to school they tell them not to fail. Failure is bad. If you fail, you're dumb. And then now, how do you encounter that? Thank you.
Interestingly, I talk about that contradiction in my book, that we grew up in an environment where at schools failure is bad. If you fail, it means you haven't learned. But in entrepreneurship, failure means you have learned something. And to change that mindset, because that thing has been said to us so many times until grade 12, you go to university, it's the same story. Success means passing all your subjects. But now that we are aware, I do that in my classes. I tell my students, I say, in my class, I want you to pass the modules. That is your success. You pass my modules, you pass. But in real life, in your entrepreneurship journey, you have to accept that it's not a classroom, it's real life, and you're going to fail to get to success. And when you are a parent, you've got kids, you start having those conversations and introducing that concept that failure in real life is about trying things and learning. It's not about you being bad. And when you build that with your kids very early on, they're not going to struggle like us to deal with failure, because you will have started the conversation with them early on to say, try whatever you want. Like my kids ask, so, Mommy, what do you want us to do, and all those, because normally as parents, we've got our own decrees that we want our kids to do. But I normally say, try whatever you want to try. You are young, as long as you don't make babies and expect me to pay for anything, I'll support you. You can try whatever that you want, fail, and then until you find the thing that you like. And those are the concepts we need to introduce to our kids. I know black text and a lot of things put that under pressure that we want to get it right first time, but those are the realities we deal with. But it's a thought that you start putting to your kids when they are still young, so that they don't struggle like us.
Hi, Doc. My name is Neil Zwalo. I'm actually author of Township Economy Mistakes. I'm pleased to be here. So I only have 3 quick questions. So firstly will be that in a normal business ecosystem, which elements do constantly enforce industrial change, and how can one actually focus such changes? And the second one is that, is business plan still the reality of a startup, or rather of a South Africa startup world? And beside that, or rather beside business modeling, which other aspect of entrepreneurship can a startup entrepreneur use to actually constantly innovate faster for their business strategy planning? And the last one is that, so we run projects in the townships through our movement called Startup Movement, where we constantly link up local producers in the township economy landscape. And one thing we've realized is that product differentiation is actually diffusing in today's competition aspect of the business world. And distribution is one of the biggest key that is actually taking over to sustain competition. Value chain is actually taking over, even having influence in the entire business ecosystem to actually take over. So to a startup or rather local entrepreneur that is in the township, how can you advise them on the market strategy that they can use to actually blend in the township consumer market if they do not actually have the structures that can actually make them dominate the township consumer market? Thank you.
Thanks, Neo. I can tell that you wrote a book. So. The first question on the ecosystem, what I didn't get what you were saying, what you need to emphasize, or do you want to repeat that?
Okay, I was saying that which elements do constantly enforce industrial changes in the normal business ecosystem, and how can one actually focus on that?
Okay. So in terms of the ecosystem, I'm going to try answer, but I'm not sure I'll get exactly where you want to get to, and I've got a feeling you've got an answer to the question. Is that within an ecosystem, one of the things that you will, the principle of an ecosystem is that is an integrated kind of a system. If one node doesn't work, it knocks the other nodes, or it makes the other nodes not to work to their optimum level. So I wouldn't say focus on one or emphasize one, because they all integrated and interrelated. So you look at an ecosystem, you've got policies. If the policies don't work, you've got support, then it will affect how you get supported and all that. So it's a matter of being able, which is one of the things that entrepreneurs need to do, is to be able to look at the full ecosystem. And that is what we are hoping our government can create, that conducive environment where people don't work in silos, but we get all the nodes within the ecosystem to be integrated and work with each other, because that's where you're going to get the best environment for SMMEs or for entrepreneurship, is when everything is integrated and work optimum and not focusing on one node than the other. And then the business plan and business model issue. In other countries, when you are a startup, you go look for funding or you go market your business. People already use the business model because you are able to tell your story using one chart. But in South Africa, if you are going to look for external support, you need the business plan. But what I always say to entrepreneurs is that if you want to get started quickly and you are not looking for external support, get moving with the business model, because you can do that very quick. You sit, one chart, you put it in front of you. You can fill up all your business departments and know what's happening on each of them with just one chart. But the business model, it takes time. It's more text. You need to explain a lot of things. You can do that while you are running your business, because things changes after you also have started. So for me, entrepreneurs, I will say, go with the business model, a canvas. If you know it, you can. If you don't, you can Google it. Business model canvas is your starting point. The business plan can follow if you need to go to external parties. The issue of product differentiation in the township, I always say a business is supposed to start from a point of a problem you are solving. And I always say, if you are solving a problem that is a problem that is severe, that people can't live without, that people are willing to pay somebody to solve for them, you will be able to differentiate yourself. because you will be doing something at the best level that other people are not doing. But sometimes what you find is that we do the Me Too kind of a business, and then it becomes difficult to differentiate yourself because we are all selling the same thing. But it takes a little bit more work and a bit more analysis to get to a point where you can say, what is really the problem I want to solve in my community that a lot of people are struggling with, that I've got capacity to solve, and I think I can solve it the best way for them to be able to want to pay me for that. And that's how you differentiate yourself. And that's when, so since you wrote a book, I will say that's when we talk about value propositions. You get me.
Wonderful. Any more questions from in the house? Gentleman in black.
Evening, Doc. Thank you so much for such an informative session. Kitsiriso Sebutsa. I just want to ask, when we raise kids, I'm a very proud father. We always think we just give to them, but kids also make us. So you may have alluded to this point while you were speaking, but I just want to know, what's the one thing that you can say tonight that if you hadn't taken on this baby, the business baby, or the business babies, if there's more than one, what is that one thing you wouldn't have gotten? What is the one thing that these babies has made out of you that you know you never had before? And it came to you, you are that thing now because of the baby. I can rephrase it.
Please do.
Okay. Babies, we as parents always think that, you know, we know everything and we are raising the baby. So we sometimes go into business with that mindset that I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and this is what the business is going to be like. What is the one thing that the business has taught you and made you, that you know that you went into business and you didn't have that one thing?
I will go back to the issue of failure, because, like I mentioned a bit, that I had qualifications, and I thought I know how to do this thing. I thought I'll get this thing working, but I find out the hard way that I didn't know. And what that taught me in my journey is that you never know what you don't know until you get to that point where you know. So you have to be then open-minded every day to say, as much as I think I know that there's something I don't know, and be open to learn every day. So what really business brought for me is that, to say, there's a lot of things I don't know, even if I think I know. And also that failure is not a negative thing. And I think if I stayed in the corporate and in class where the concept of failure is not as in entrepreneurship, I wouldn't have gotten to that point of understanding that it is not a negative thing, it's part of the process.
Wonderful. Can we give a round of applause as we close? For those in the house and online, we are talking about entrepreneurship and leadership. And within this organization, we've got an organization called Marketplace Ministry Institute. And if you are interested, we've got a 9-month course. We'll be opening quite soon. You can visit www.mmi-sa.com. We've got a comprehensive course that will take you through all the different ropes in terms of entrepreneurship and leadership. Dr. J, it's Women's Month, and in the book you have a section dedicated to women. What's your message to women specifically, and your closing message to all entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs?
Women is my passion. It's a very passionate issue that I talk about. So I dedicated a whole chapter to women because the message that I wanted to bring forth to women, which was as a result of me as a coach, that I've observed in my coaching sessions, that the level of confidence of women is very low when you compare to the level of confidence of men. A man can know 2 things, but the level of confidence will be at 10. And a woman knows 10 things, but the level of confidence will be at 2. So, and I've observed that over and over again during my sessions. And when you probe, you realize that there are a lot of socialization and expectations in the community that has affected how women feel about themselves and what women expect from themselves. And then I wrote that chapter to say to women, you are great. You were born great. No one else is going to make you great. But what's going to make you great is to start believing that you are great. Because the minute you believe that you are great, you're going to take big opportunities. You're going to apply for promotions at work. You're going to go for big things because you believe I am great, I am meant to be great, and I am here to live my greatness. But if you don't believe that, there will be a promotion at work, you are not going to apply for it. And confidence will invite you to come and talk. You will say no, maybe next time, because you don't have that confidence to do things. So that was the reason for that chapter, to try to say to women, get out of the comfort zone, deal with the limiting beliefs that makes your success so low, and start opening it up, thinking big, seeing yourself as this big thing that the world can do without. Because that's the impression you get from men. The confidence men walk with is so amazing. And I wish we can have that as women. But we need to start preaching it to say, believe you are great, you are meant to be great, and you are the only one who can start showing that greatness. And then to all the entrepreneurs and the aspiring entrepreneurs, embrace failure is part of the process. If you are aspiring, you are thinking of something to start, you are not going to be made an entrepreneur by thinking it, you need to do it. Don't be scared to fail. Even if you think it's not fully fledged in terms of what you want to do, it's going to get fully fledged in the process. Just start and get moving. You will be surprised how much you will do with a half-done thing. It develops and evolves as you go. If you wait for the day where it's going to be perfect for you to start as an entrepreneur, that day will happen when we are in a grave, because it is not going to be perfect. So get started and get moving. And I would like to also invite those who are aspiring and those who want to build their social capital, as I mentioned earlier, that I run entrepreneurs breakfast. We're having one this coming Saturday, where you can also meet other entrepreneurs and hear their stories, how they started, as scared as they were, how they started and how they were able to get to where they are. Because sometimes you just need to get out and see other people and hear where they started and realize that you don't need to be more perfect than you are to get started. You can start wherever you are. Just start, and tomorrow you will be telling a different story.
You also mentioned that you do mentoring coaching for those who would like to acquire your services. Where can I go?
So yes, I am a mentor, I'm a coach, and a very good one. That's what my coaches and mentees say. So I'm just passing the message. We are on social media, so you can find us on social media. It's at Dr. JB's, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, same everywhere. At Dr. JB's is DRJ with B's, B-I-Z. Or you can find us there. If you are not on social media, you can WhatsApp 076-477-2788. That's my cell number. I give it away freely. But if you send a hi, I'm not going to respond. You need to get to the story when you send a WhatsApp as to what you are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give a round of applause? Dr. J, thank you so much for honoring the invite. Thank you for investing the time, the energy and resources into producing this wonderful work. I believe it's going to move our thinking forward, and it's going to increase the success levels so that we don't play around in the 90% anymore. But thank you. Can we give another round of applause? So In the spirit of Women's Month, we at ULP, we believe in women empowerment, and we've got our own, she's an entrepreneur in her own right, Nono Shabangu, who will be doing the closing for us. Can we give a round of applause?
Thank you very, very much. I'm going to ask that we stand and give Dr. J a round of applause for a beautiful session. Thank you very, very much, Dr. J. That was very, very fruitful.
Thank you.
And you know, I love that it's an entrepreneurship book turned love story. I think you should come back in February. Same book. But this time we're talking about all these misters that are in the book, you know. So thank you very, very much. And thank you to Abuti Confidence, you know, for always just leading us in ULP Authors Forum. We really appreciate you. My name is Nono Shabango. I'm a child here at ULP. I'm an event organizer, a very good one. And so I'm just here to help us, you know, like close. I really just want to thank you for demystifying the complexities of entrepreneurship, making entrepreneurship relatable, making it palatable, you know. So we really got a lot tonight, and we have actually in the house an entrepreneur turned intrapreneur, our very own Ubab Khatebe, you know, and you can get his stories and his messages on Patreon. So we've got a Patreon page. If you hear you can go there, and all the sessions that we've ever recorded are on Patreon. Tonight's session will be on YouTube just up until tomorrow, and then thereafter it will be available on Patreon. And then in the spirit of Women's Month, and we are extending it here, and on the 10th of September, we have Women in Energy. Again, a property that was born and bred here at ULP. And we have great speakers that will be joining us here live at ULP House. So do secure your space. And the topic is opportunities in the renewable and hydrogen energy economy. It is open to everyone, both male and female, but as we have learned about social capital, I urge women to come out. Come out and let's play, and let's move our confidence from 2 to a higher number. I want to thank the audience for tonight. Please clap for your hands, clap hands for yourselves. Thank you for participating. I call tonight the night of 3 quick questions, because everyone had 3 quick questions. So thank you for being a sport. Thank you for those really engaging and thought-provoking questions that were asked. And again, it was clearly said tonight. We've seen it, we've heard it, and therefore we are going to do it. There's a good book that says we are good ground. And from good ground, there's a production, there's fruit, you know. So today we are good ground, and from us, we will bear fruit and produce. We were not here, mahala. All right, so that's it for tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. The online audience, we really appreciate you. We know that if it weren't for you, there'd be a few of us, but there's more because of you. Do continue to follow ULP on our page, www.unleashingleadershippotential.co.za. We've got MMI that was just introduced now. Go to www.mmi-sa.com, and if you have any other information that you require, we are there. Thank you again. Have a blessed evening. Have a blessed week ahead.